My parents took me to court for buying a house, no joke, claiming I owed them for raising me. Hi, I'm Melinda. 3 weeks ago, I did something most 27-year-olds only fantasize about during lunch breaks and late-night scrolling sessions. I bought my own house, a charming two-story cottage in Riverside with white shutters, a wraparound porch, and mature oak trees that made the whole street look like a movie set. The kind of place where you could picture yourself drinking morning coffee and actually enjoying it. Finally, right? My own space, my own rules, my own slice of the American dream. That dream lasted exactly 11 days before a process server showed up at my door with papers that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. "You have got to be kidding me," Isabella said, nearly choking on her iced latte as she stared at me across my brand new farmhouse table. Her dark eyes were wider than I'd ever seen them. "Your actual biological parents are taking you to court for buying a house? How is that even remotely legal?" I pushed the legal documents toward her, my hands still shaking slightly. "They're claiming I owe them money, a substantial amount of money." "For what?" Isabella flipped through the pages, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the paper with increasing agitation. "What could you possibly owe them for?" "For raising me," I said, the words feeling like gravel in my throat. "Room and board from ages 18 to 26, plus accumulated interest. They're stating I entered into a verbal contract to reimburse them once I achieved what they're calling financial stability. And apparently, purchasing a $265,000 home proves I've reached that milestone." Isabella looked up at me like I'd just told her the earth was flat. "That's absolutely deranged. Did you actually agree to something like that?" "Of course not. But they've been drilling it into my head since junior year of high school that living under their roof wasn't charity, that I was accruing a debt. I just never imagined they'd actually try to collect on it, like some kind of loan shark operation." My phone buzzed violently on the counter. I glanced at the screen and felt my chest tighten. "Speaking of the devil," I muttered. "Are you seriously going to answer that?" Isabella asked, setting down her cup with a sharp clink. I took a deep breath and pressed the green button, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Mother." "Melinda." My mother's voice was measured, controlled, that particular tone she reserved for when she was about to manipulate me into something. "We need to have a conversation about this unfortunate situation. Your father and I are deeply disappointed that you forced us to take such drastic measures." "Forced your hand?" I could hear my voice rising despite my best efforts. "You're literally suing me." "We invested considerable resources in you for years," she continued, as if I hadn't even spoken. "We provided you with a home while you accumulated savings," my mother continued, her voice dripping with practiced patience, "and savings that should have been directed toward supporting the household that sheltered you." My father's voice boomed in the background, unmistakable even through the phone. "Tell her we expected considerably more respect than this, after everything we sacrificed for her future." "Dad, seriously? Why don't you just talk to me yourself instead of hovering in the background like some kind of puppet master?" "Don't you dare take that tone with us," my mother snapped, her composure cracking just slightly. "This isn't personal, Melinda. It's simply business. You resided in our home as a legal adult for 8 years. That arrangement comes with financial obligations." "Obligations I met by paying you rent every single month." My voice was getting louder. "I have bank statements. I have receipts. I have proof of every payment." "That minimal amount barely covered our grocery expenses," my mother scoffed. "We could have rented your bedroom to an actual tenant for triple what you paid. Someone who would have appreciated the opportunity." Isabella was frantically scribbling on a napkin, holding it up for me to see. "They just admitted you paid rent." "So this is really about money?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is about honoring your commitments to the people who gave you life," my mother insisted. "We consistently told you there would be a reckoning eventually, a settlement of accounts. You told me. You never asked for my agreement. You didn't object, which legally implies consent. she said, her voice sharpening like a knife being honed. Besides, let's address the elephant in the room. Where exactly did you get the down payment for this house? We're fully aware of your salary, Melinda. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Are you actually suggesting I stole from you? We're saying the circumstances are questionable. Money doesn't materialize from thin air. I saved it! I was shouting now, all pretense of calm abandoned. I've been working since I was 15 years old, taking every shift I could get, doing freelance graphic design on weekends, while living expense-free in our home, my father yelled from somewhere in their house, while we subsidized your lifestyle. We're prepared to settle this amicably, my mother added, her tone shifting to something almost conciliatory. Sign the house over to us, and you can continue residing there while paying us a reasonable monthly rent. Everyone wins. Isabella's jaw literally dropped open. You want my house? I couldn't process what I was hearing. You want to take my actual house? It should have been our house to begin with, my mother said firmly. You had an obligation to prioritize your family before indulging in personal luxuries. We'll see you in court, Melinda. Our attorney will be in touch. The line went dead. Isabella stared at me, her face pale. They want to steal your house. Melinda, this is seriously messed up on levels I can't even begin to process. They've always been controlling, I said, sinking into one of my new kitchen chairs, the reality of the situation settling over me like a heavy blanket. But this is a whole new level of manipulation I wasn't prepared for. They're actually going to try to take everything you've worked for, Isabella said, already pulling out her phone with determination. Not on my watch. My brother Nathan is a lawyer. He specializes in family law. This ends right now. 2 hours later, my living room looked like a war room. Isabella had called reinforcements. They've been spreading stories throughout the entire family that you embezzled money from them, Aunt Vivian said, stirring her Earl Grey tea with enough force to create a small whirlpool. She was my father's younger sister, and unlike him, she'd always been on my side. Your mother called me last Tuesday, asking if you'd ever mentioned having some kind of secret inheritance or hidden bank account. That's completely absurd, I groaned, dropping my head into my hands. I've been saving every single dollar since high school. I ate ramen noodles for dinner 4 nights a week in college. I worked double shifts at Starbucks and did freelance design work until midnight, all while paying them rent from my own pocket. I know, sweetheart. I never believed their nonsense for even a second, Aunt Vivian said warmly. Nathan, Isabella's brother, and now apparently my attorney, looked up from his laptop. His glasses reflected the screen's glow. We need to compile comprehensive documentation, bank statements, pay stubs, rent receipts, canceled checks, anything demonstrating your complete financial independence from them. I have nearly everything digitally, I said, feeling a small spark of hope. I've always been meticulous about keeping records. Something told me I might need them one day. Smart woman, Aunt Vivian nodded approvingly. You always were sharper than my brother gave you credit for. Unlike him, you actually plan ahead instead of scheming. Did Dad always have this entitled mindset? I asked, genuinely curious. Or is this a recent development? Aunt Vivian let out a short, bitter laugh. Always. When we were children, he'd literally claim ownership of my birthday presents if I happened to leave them in his room for more than 5 minutes. Your mother only amplified those tendencies. They feed off each other's worst impulses like some kind of toxic feedback loop. Isabella returned from my kitchen with fresh coffee refills. Nathan, what are we realistically looking at here? What are our chances? Better than you might initially think, he said, adjusting his glasses and leaning back. Their claim has absolutely no legal foundation. You cannot retroactively bill your adult child for living expenses without a documented, pre-existing written agreement. And even then, it's highly questionable. But that's exactly what they're claiming exists, I pointed out. They're saying there was a clear agreement. Verbal contracts are notoriously difficult to prove in court, Nathan explained. And we have concrete evidence of consistent rent payments, which directly contradicts their entire narrative. The doorbell rang suddenly, making us all jump. Isabella peered through my new curtains. "It's your father," she said quietly. My stomach dropped again. "I don't want to see him," I said immediately, my heart pounding. "I can't deal with this right now." "You don't have to," Nathan said firmly, standing up and straightening his tie. "In fact, you absolutely shouldn't without legal representation present, which, conveniently, you now have." I nodded gratefully as Isabella walked toward the front door. Through my walls, which suddenly seemed far too thin, I could hear my father's voice already escalating. "Where is she? I know Melinda's in there. I saw the cars." "Mr. Harrison," Isabella said in an impressively even tone, "Melinda doesn't want to speak with you right now. You should probably leave." "This is family business. Tell her to stop hiding behind her friends like a coward and face her own parents." Aunt Vivian stood up abruptly, her teacup clattering against the saucer. "That's my cue." She marched toward the door. And despite Nathan's warning glance, I followed. I couldn't let everyone else fight my battles. "Robert," Aunt Vivian's voice could have frozen fire. "What exactly do you think you're doing showing up here?" My father looked genuinely startled to see his sister. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" "Supporting my niece, which is considerably more than I can say for her so-called parents." "You don't understand the situation." "I understand perfectly," Aunt Vivian interrupted. "You're attempting to bully your own daughter out of her accomplishments because you're jealous that she's succeeded in ways you never could. That's what I understand." My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "How dare you? After everything we did for her? After all the sacrifices we made?" "Like what?" I found myself stepping forward, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "Like taking a third of every paycheck I earned since I was 15? Like charging me rent all through college when I was barely scraping by? Like making me cover the family cell phone plan?" "We gave you a home," he shouted, his voice echoing down my quiet suburban street. "We gave you everything." "A home where everything came with a price tag attached," I shot back. "Where every meal, every shower, every hour of electricity was apparently being tallied up in some kind of twisted ledger." "You ungrateful!" He stepped forward menacingly. Nathan appeared beside me instantly. "Mr. Harrison, I'm Nathan Rodriguez, Melinda's attorney. I strongly advise you to leave these premises immediately, or I'll be forced to call the police for trespassing." "You hired a lawyer?" My father looked genuinely shocked, as if the thought had never occurred to him. "Against your own parents?" "Did you really think I'd just hand over my house?" I asked incredulously. "Did you actually believe I'd just roll over and let you take everything I've worked for?" "This isn't over," my father growled, backing down the porch steps but pointing at me accusingly. "Your mother and I raised you better than this. We taught you about family loyalty." "Actually," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, "I raised myself, despite you, not because of you. See you in court, Dad." The courtroom was more intimate than I'd imagined from watching legal dramas on television. Intimate enough that I could see every micro-expression on my parents' faces as they sat across the aisle. My mother maintained her composure, back straight, chin high, occasionally leaning over to whisper to their attorney. My father fidgeted constantly, shifting in his seat, unable to maintain eye contact with me. Judge Martinez, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, reviewed the documents before her with careful attention, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. "I've reviewed the filings in this highly unusual case," she began, her voice carrying authority. "Before we proceed with testimony, I want to clarify exactly what we're addressing here. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison are suing their daughter for $178,000, allegedly representing living expenses accrued from age 18 to 26, plus what they're calling accumulated interest. Is that correct?" Their lawyer, Mr. Davidson, stood smoothly. "That's correct, Your Honor." "And what exactly is the legal basis for this claim?" "My clients provided comprehensive housing, food, utilities, and various other necessities to the defendant, with a clear understanding that these expenses would be reimbursed once she achieved financial independence. Judge Martinez's eyebrow rose slightly. Was this understanding documented in any written form? It was a verbal agreement, Your Honor, consistently reinforced and acknowledged throughout the defendant's residency in their home. I see. She turned to Nathan. And the defendant's position? Nathan stood confidently. Your Honor, no such agreement ever existed. Furthermore, Miss Harrison paid regular monthly rent to her parents throughout her entire adult residency in their home, which we've extensively documented. Is this accurate? Judge Martinez directed the question to my parents. My mother leaned forward slightly. Your Honor, the amounts she paid were token contributions, not legitimate rent payments. But you did accept regular financial payments from your daughter? The judge pressed. My mother hesitated, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. Yes, but they called it family contribution, I interjected, unable to stop myself. Nathan placed a gentle but warning hand on my arm, but Judge Martinez nodded for me to continue. Every single month since I was 15 years old, I've given them money. It started at 20% of whatever I earned at my part-time jobs, then increased to 30% when I turned 18. They told me it was my duty, my obligation to the family. That's a complete fabrication, my father burst out, half rising from his seat. Mr. Harrison, please control yourself, Judge Martinez warned sharply. Nathan presented a thick folder. Your Honor, we've compiled Miss Harrison's complete bank records showing consistent monthly withdrawals, along with text messages from the plaintiffs explicitly acknowledging these payments as rent. As the judge examined the documents, my mother leaned urgently toward Mr. Davidson, whispering frantically. Mr. Davidson cleared his throat. Your Honor, even if these payments were made, they don't negate the broader understanding regarding full reimbursement upon financial maturity. What evidence do you have of this supposed understanding? Judge Martinez asked pointedly. My clients have testimony from family acquaintances who heard the defendant acknowledge her future obligations. That's hearsay, Nathan countered immediately. Furthermore, Mr. Davidson continued, clearly grasping at straws, the defendant's recent purchase of a home valued at $265,000 raises legitimate questions about the source of her funds. My clients have reason to believe. Are you seriously accusing me of theft? I interrupted, unable to contain myself any longer. In a courtroom? Melinda, Nathan whispered urgently. My mother stood abruptly. Where else would you get that kind of money, Melinda? You work in retail management at Target. We know exactly what you earn. The numbers don't add up. Mrs. Harrison, sit down immediately, Judge Martinez ordered sternly. I saved every penny, I exclaimed, standing now too. I worked overtime shifts. I did freelance graphic design on weekends and evenings. I invested what little I could in index funds. And yes, I qualified for a first-time homebuyer program that required a lower down payment. Everything was legitimate. Convenient story, my father muttered audibly. Actually, Nathan interjected smoothly, we've prepared a comprehensive financial history. Miss Harrison has maintained separate bank accounts since age 15, with documented deposits precisely matching her employment history across multiple jobs. Every dollar is accounted for. As Nathan presented the detailed documentation, I watched my parents' faces carefully. My father grew increasingly agitated, his face reddening by the minute, while my mother maintained her mask of righteous indignation, but I could see cracks forming. Furthermore, Nathan continued, we've discovered something particularly concerning during our investigation. He presented another file to the judge. Bank records showing regular transfers from Miss Harrison's personal account to the plaintiff's joint account, specifically labeled as rent on her end, but mysteriously recategorized as family gifts in their records. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. That's a serious allegation, Mr. Rodriguez, Judge Martinez said, examining the records with evident interest. It's just accounting semantics, my mother said dismissively, but her voice wavered slightly. Different labels for identical transactions, nothing nefarious. Labels that conveniently allowed you to avoid reporting rental income on your tax returns, Nathan pointed out calmly. For 8 consecutive years. My father suddenly exploded to his feet, pointing directly at me with a shaking finger. This is how you repay us? By trying to get us investigated by the IRS after everything we sacrificed for you? Mr. Harrison, Judge Martinez's voice cracked through the courtroom like thunder. Control yourself immediately, or I will have you removed from this courtroom and held in contempt. This is all her fault, my father continued, his face now purple with rage. She was supposed to help fund our retirement. That was always the plan we had for her. That house should rightfully be ours. Robert, stop talking, my mother hissed, desperately pulling at his arm. No, Beverly, I'm sick and tired of her selfish attitude. After we sacrificed everything, our savings, our opportunities, our plans, she just walks away with our money to buy herself a house like we mean nothing. The truth finally laid completely bare. The courtroom fell silent once more, everyone processing what had just been admitted. Judge Martinez sat back in her chair, removing her glasses slowly. The moment of truth has arrived. What will the judge decide? Act 7. New Beginnings. 550 words. Given the evidence presented and the plaintiff's own statements in this courtroom, Judge Martinez announced 2 days later, her voice carrying the weight of finality. I'm dismissing this case with prejudice. The claim has no legal merit whatsoever. The relief that flooded through my body was indescribable. I sat frozen in my chair as Nathan squeezed my shoulder in congratulation. Across the aisle, my mother sat rigid as a statue while my father buried his face in his hands. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm granting the defendant's countersuit for harassment and legal fees. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison are hereby ordered to pay $8,000 in damages to Ms. Harrison and are prohibited from contacting the defendant except through legal counsel for a period of 2 years. The judge paused, looking directly at my parents. I'm also referring the matter of potential tax fraud to the appropriate federal authorities for thorough investigation. As we exited the courtroom, my mother rushed to intercept me in the marble hallway, her carefully maintained composure finally shattering completely. Melinda, please, she pleaded, her voice barely above a desperate whisper. You have to help us. If they investigate our taxes thoroughly, we could lose everything. The house, our savings. You should have considered those consequences before you tried to steal my house, I replied evenly, surprised by my own calmness. We're your parents, she said, as if that explained everything. Parents don't sue their children for succeeding in life. My father approached then, his earlier rage completely replaced with raw desperation. We can fix this, as a family. Just drop the tax issue, and we'll forget about everything else. Forget about the money? I echoed incredulously. You mean the imaginary debt that never existed? The money you tried to extort from me by dragging me through court? We made mistakes, my mother admitted, actually reaching for my hand. We were wrong about our approach, but we're still family. That has to mean something. I pulled my hand away. Family doesn't treat each other like ATM machines. Family doesn't keep financial ledgers on their children. What do you want from us? My father demanded, his voice cracking. An apology? Fine. We're sorry. We're very sorry. I don't want anything from you, I said truthfully, feeling lighter than I had in years. Not anymore. Not ever again. You can't just cut us off completely, my mother insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. We're blood, Melinda. Watch me. Isabella and Aunt Vivian were waiting by the elevator, concern and pride mixed on their faces. Everything okay? Isabella asked as I joined them. Never better, I replied honestly, not looking back as my parents' voices faded into nothing behind us. 3 weeks later, I hosted a housewarming party. Isabella, Nathan, Aunt Vivian, and friends from work filled my living room with genuine laughter and authentic congratulations. No strings attached, no hidden agendas, just people who actually cared. To Melinda's house, Isabella announced, raising her champagne glass high. May it always be filled with people who truly love her. As glasses clinked and genuine smiles surrounded me, I looked around at my home, my real home, earned through my own determination and protected by my own courage. This house was mine, and so was my life. Finally.